My name is Emily Nobles. I'm a Jonathan Law senior, and I will be continuing my academic career at Quinnipiac in the fall, majoring in health science and minoring in nutrition. So I interned at Chloe Serino Nutrition. At Chloe Serino Nutrition, they do nutrition counseling. Chloe is the founder but works alongside three other registered dietitians named Taylor, Nicole, and Allison. Chloe is currently the only one taking in-person clients. Some of the dietitians that are a part of Chloe's team don't live in Connecticut, so they practice using telehealth. Chloe's practice offers nutrition counseling, nutrition and intuitive eating coaching, supported meals, and intuitive eating groups. Supported meals are basically just when you don't feel comfortable eating around other people or eating out places outside of like your house or like informal areas. The dietitian will actually eat the same meal as you while like on telehealth with you. So if you were eating Chipotle that day, Chloe might go and buy Chipotle to be able to eat it with you. And then the intuitive eating groups are something that they think is really important because it's important to be part of a group with people that also have the same struggle as you. So if like it's easy to talk to your dietitian or like your family about anything going on intuitive eating wise, but having a group of people that also have the same experience as you is super beneficial too. So this is Chloe. She's a non-diet intuitive eating aligned registered dietitian and nutritionist and certified eating disorder specialist. She firmly believes that all foods fit into a healthy lifestyle and that health can exist at every size. She received her dual bachelor's degree from NYU in nutrition and psychology and a master's degree in nutrition from Columbia. She has 5 years of experience treating individuals with eating disorders and disordered eating and has worked at several eating disorder treatment centers in Manhattan. Chloe is a proud member of the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals, the International Federation of Eating Disorder Dietitians, the Healers Circle with Project Heal, and the Association for Size, Diversity, and Health. Project Heal's vision is something that really stood out to me. Their vision is to create a world where everyone with an eating disorder has the opportunities and resources they need to heal. Their programs break down the systematic healthcare, financial barriers that millions of people in the U.S. face when trying to heal from an eating disorder. This is because insurance companies don't look at dietitians as like someone that they need to pay for help, basically. So a lot of the time, dietitians can't take insurance because they won't be making any money from taking insurance, basically. So Project Heal works with dietitians around the world to be able to pay for these medical counseling that insurances aren't paying for. So I chose this site because it worked best with my schedule, and I felt like Chloe was able to give me the more one-on-one experience that other places wouldn't be able to. And that is true. She also ended up carving time out of her day just to teach me like certain things that she thought would be beneficial for me. So the business of my site, there's two different things that they do. They do counseling for people with active eating disorders, and they also do counseling for people just looking to improve their overall health and manage like different GI conditions. So for those with eating disorders, they work with you to create a plan to heal from your eating disorder and walk the path toward full recovery. They do follow-up sessions, which you will discuss what has been working well so far in your treatment, as well as what adjustments can be made to help navigate around obstacles that you face. They will collaborate with you regularly with the rest of your treatment team to ensure the best possible treatment for you. So your treatment team could be like a therapist or even like another primary care doctor. This is what we did most of the time during my internship. We did more like follow-up sessions. I think one intake, which is just they ask you kind of like why you want to follow the intuitive eating aligned treatment and just like things like that. So in the follow-up sessions, they ask you like, what have you been eating? Like, have you been eating regularly? Just kind of trying to keep you on that track and making sure that you're staying healthy and that this is the appropriate level of care for you. And then those looking to improve your overall health or just manage a different condition, they work with you to improve your overall health outcomes or manage a specific condition using intuitive eating, like all foods can fit approach. In follow-up sessions, they discuss what has been working well for you, kind of just like the same thing, but more like less focused on your recovery because you're already recovered, just looking to improve what you already have. And then for my expectations, I wasn't sure what to expect. Chloe was super nice over like our Zooms and emails prior to me going in. I knew that I would have the opportunity to shadow some sessions and that like HIPAA would be involved in order for me to be able to do that. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to be in person or Zoom because when me and Chloe would speak, it would be like over Zoom, and I wasn't sure what her office situation is, knowing that her other dietitians don't really live in Connecticut, so I wasn't sure about that. And then I wasn't sure if Chloe was gonna like let me work with her, if I was gonna be assigned to someone else on her team. And then for my responsibilities, I completed a weekly project that would further my knowledge of nutrition, which would be either like looking into the different nutrients or seeing how nutrition and dermatology work together. And then I would shadow sessions and take notes to debrief after. So that would just be like listening into the conversations that Chloe was having and then writing down what I noticed about them or like questions I had about any of the things she said. And then another one of my responsibilities was to read the Intuitive Eating Principles. I usually read like 2 a week. This is basically a book that, in a workbook that worked together to help people understand the intuitive eating mindset and why this would be more beneficial than just like being on a diet basically. And then observe provider calls. This is when Chloe would call insurance companies and like try to work with them about coming up with funds for their client or calling someone else's therapist to discuss like something that they had said in that session, or even just looking for, one of our clients didn't have a therapist because it was her like first intake, so we were trying to set her up with someone. But since she only took Medicare, a lot of therapists don't take Medicare for some reason. So we were on the phone with her insurance company trying to find a therapist that would work best to help her eating disorder. And then some of my accomplishments are I successfully read the 10 intuitive eating principles and understood them. I wrote a blog post about the relationship between nutrition and dermatology, which will be published on her website soon. And then I created a professional relationship with Chloe. I feel like that's one of my most important things because like we left off on such a good note that like I would feel 100% comfortable coming back and like asking her for another one in the future or like letter of recommendation. And I know that she would feel comfortable going out of her way to help me at this point. One of the challenges I faced was walking into sessions at the beginning of my internship, not fully understanding the intuitive eating mindset. So it was a little bit hard for me to like, from what I know about diet culture anyways, to walk into a session and have Chloe say that like this is okay and like we shouldn't be doing this because what everybody knows is like diet mentality. So it's different when who you're working with, that's not what they want. And I feel like it was super beneficial for me to read the intuitive eating principles. And then one of the other challenges for me was my first in-person session because it was just super awkward, like that this person was actually sitting in front of me while I'm typing on my computer instead of me sitting next to the computer and typing while they're just on with Chloe. And then this was kind of my work area set up at Chloe's office. And then I think that some of my skills developed were flexibility, definitely, because it's like being able to jump from being on something to like a private practice operation or like jumping onto a therapist call after being on a session. And then also patience, I feel like is something that a lot of people don't talk about because you have to watch your client grow from day one. Like it's not just the next session, like everything's better. So you have to just be patient in their recovery. And then something that it has brought to me is I decided to minor in nutrition as well as major in health science, and then I just added that on the side again too. And then this is also something I thought was important. Chloe would carve time out of her schedule to provide me with insight about running a private practice because she knew I had interest in doing this in the future. So she would teach me things like how to read the electronic medical record system, how to come up with proper intake forms and like what this means and why they ask these questions, billing, which like I learned insurance codes and like how to basically bill insurances, and then super bills, which is like actually billing the insurance instead of billing the person, hiring employees. This is when I would ask her like for her informational interview, I asked her what she like looks for in employees, and we would talk about like things that stick out to her, like if you have something misspelled in your resume or cover letter, then it's kind of like a red flag, or if you're like overly joyful, but you also don't know anything about intuitive eating, but you're trying to be hired at an intuitive eating counseling place. And then also just marketing strategies, being that I think that's one of the questions I asked Chloe in her interview was, how does not being a business major affect you being a business owner, basically? And we talked about how like it kind of works hand in hand, like since you have to run everything yourself, like you kind of just have to adapt and like run with the punches sort of thing. And then I also wanted to include my favorite memory from my internship. This was after Memorial Day weekend. It was Tuesday, and it was my last in-person day, and I was like, oh, how was your weekend, Chloe? And she was like, oh, just normal, whatever. And then I was like, oh, yeah, mine too. So it was like we went through a whole day of work, and it was right when I was going to leave, and she starts laughing. I'm like, Chloe, why are you laughing? And she's like, I have to tell you something. I'm like, okay. And then she tells me that she got engaged, but totally downplayed it the whole day and then didn't tell me until I was about to leave. So I thought that that was my favorite memory to include. And then questions. Miss Sylvia.
I just want to make like a comment. I think obviously from your last story and from what you said at the beginning of your presentation, you developed a really nice like relationship with your supervisor. Do you feel like, I know you mentioned that you wouldn't hesitate in the future to ask for an opportunity, but what do you think the best thing you learned from Chloe was? Like if you had to put your hand on one thing, what do you think you took away from your experience with her specifically?
I think that Chloe has just kind of taught me to jump on every like opportunity given to me. She bounced back and forth like a lot with, I feel like she was offered a job from her like first position, like the Manhattan one I was talking about, and she kind of like, that's one of the things I asked her in her informational interview was like, how did you and why did you like decline that position? And it's kind of just about being able to like say no and like grow from things you're comfortable with type thing. And she has just like kind of taught me to jump on every opportunity given. Miss Firth.
Similar to that question, if you, now knowing what you know about nutrition, if I came to you and said, okay, what's like the number one thing I need to know, what would you say?
I would say read the principles book. I think that nutrition is misunderstood in the fact that you would think it's about dieting, but in like Chloe's world and like intuitive eating itself, it's about like building a better relationship with food, which I didn't realize had such a better outcome on clients and everybody, honestly, just seeing that like it's not about like losing weight and dieting. It's about the actual relationship you're building with each food and being able to understand like what kind of nutrients like each food would provide for you.
Have any of your eating habits changed?
Honestly, yeah. I didn't really know, like, I mean, I know what like carbs are, but just like knowing what like everything is and how important each thing is in a role to you, like fiber especially, and just like things like that. Like I realized that I should be eating more of them because like maybe that would like help.
Yeah.
Grace.
Did you like being in person better? Or
I did like being in person better. At first I was like, wow, this is a blessing that I only really have to get dressed 2 days out of the week. But like in the end, like I wish it was more like in person, because I feel like that's when me and Chloe would like get closer, because like on Zoom it's kind of just like we would talk about what's scheduled because like it's kind of like awkward, but in person like that gave us time to like go off task and like actually build that connection. Like the day I found out she was getting married, we were talking about like Anthropologie wedding dresses because my mom also was looking like at Anthropologie wedding dresses, and then we went on a whole tangent about it, which was pretty funny.
Great job, Emily.
Thank you.
So I did my internship at Guaranteed Rate Affinity.
I'm Grace Baird. I'm a senior at Jonathan Law High School, and I plan on attending the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa next year, studying business management. I interned at Guaranteed Rate Infinity, which is out of Codwell Banker in downtown Milford. Guaranteed Rate Infinity is a partnership between real estate and Guaranteed Rate, which provides mortgages across the country. And like I said, it's located in downtown Milford. My site supervisor was Scott Dana, who is the vice president of mortgage lending. He has been a friend of my family's for almost my entire life, and he actually did the mortgage on my parents' first house. I chose this site because it is one of the many fields of business, but it's one of the fields of business that I was less familiar with, and it's a field that not as many people typically go into. He's one of the only mortgage people in his building, which makes it a little bit less familiar to me. And I've always been interested in houses, and mortgage combines that with real estate. The business of this site is that it provides residential mortgage lending services. It offers home purchases, relocation mortgages, and investor loans, and it serves people all across the United States. Some of my expectations prior to my internship is that I was expecting mostly to watch and just be mentored by my supervisor. I expected to be able to learn my way around the office and to talk with some of the other employees and understand their role and why they were important in the building. I was tasked with helping brainstorm and producing reels for social media. I learned that marketing was a very important piece in mortgage because it's such a small business that getting your word out is sometimes difficult, and the more people you bring in, the more business you're able to produce, which is why it also helps with some other marketing tasks. And I was making posters and helping him on my free time so that I could post his posters across the office and other places downtown to bring more business to him. And I was also able to log on to several Zoom meetings and listen to work calls with his clients. I don't have per se a list of achievements or accomplishments that I did throughout, but I did feel that it was a really good learning experience for me. I learned the importance of credit right off the bat the first day. There was a Zoom meeting that was talking about the new and improving ways of credit and why it's becoming even more crucial. I realized that I am interested in marketing, and it was something that maybe I feel I might want to study in the future. I worked with people in other areas of business and learned what their jobs are too. I didn't know if this was a field that I would want to be, or know that I would be interested in it, but I knew that definitely I wanted to do something similar. So given the opportunity to talk with other people in similar fields, I thought was very beneficial to me. And I decided that I wanted to do something in the business world. Maybe just mortgage wasn't for me. My first challenge I faced was when my supervisor asked me if I can create a reel for him. He was very into social media, as it was just coming to be something that he felt he needed, and he wanted me to video record a couple of different videos and put them together for him. And it is not my specialty, but I knew that if I went home and I did a little bit of research, I would definitely be able to help him, and that's what I wanted to be there for him. I do think that I've developed time management, knowing that there's certain things that need to be done on certain times, as well as if you get them done as soon as you need to get them done, it's easier in the long run. I learned the importance of working together because a team is not just one person, and it takes a lot of different areas of expertise and a lot of different people working together to make a project as great as it can be. And I also learned problem solving because nothing goes the way it's planned the first time, and it usually takes a couple of tries, but if you keep trying at it, then you will get your best product. I will be able to put my internship on my resume, and it has taught me some of the things that I like and some of the things I don't like about business, which is why I think that when I go to school, I'll know exactly what I want to do. I plan to major in business management in the fall, and I would like to get a job as a financial or operations manager. A financial financial manager focuses more on monitoring companies' financial health, analyzing data, keeping cash flow records, and creating strategies to maximize profits, while an operation or manager manage all activities, including producing the goods or series of a business, which is more important. Any questions? Anyone?
What would you say is your most important takeaway from your internship?
I think my most important takeaway is that it's nothing goes the way it's planned, and it's really important to know that it's not going to go your way the first time, but there's a lot of different ways that you can go about something and still end up with a good result. Emily?
Did you find it easier walking into this knowing that you already had a connection with your site supervisor?
At first, when I first decided that this is where I was going to do it, I felt more like at peace. But once, the day that came that I was supposed to go in, I was like, I don't know him as well as I thought I would, and this is going to be so awkward because I don't know anyone else. But he ended up taking me under his wing, and he was really good at showing me all the different aspects of what he did in his job. And some of the things that he knew, he'd be like, you're not going to like this. But he was really good at giving me a wide variety of things that I would be interested in. Ms. Burns?
First of all, it looks like you could be going to work at a mortgage. So
That's what I was going for.
Yeah, I'm like, she looks so professional. Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned about credit? What's the need to know for young people about credit?
I think it's important. So a lot of people think it's exciting to get credit cards at 18 years old, and I have always been scared of that because my mom's always been like, she doesn't use her credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that people use it and they don't understand fully what it is that they're doing and how much it could affect them in the future. Like when they're going to, a lot of times he deals with first-time home buyers. And I think that people don't realize something they do at 18 or 20 years old can affect them buying their first house, because it's harder to be able to get them loans if their credit is lower. Even if it's just a little bit lower than it is, they would have to pay more out of pocket, or it's something that they would end up paying more money in the future, which is just less beneficial to them. But it's just something that they don't realize when they're younger.
I have 2 follow-up questions. Did you see anybody with a crazy low credit score?
Yes.
How low?
It was in the 300s, and she called him and she was like, I want to buy $1 million house. And we were like, even I was like, can I be the one to tell her she can't do that?
Did you tell her?
No, I didn't tell her, but he was like, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Which is he specializes in one-day loans, so he is very quick on his turnaround about finding people loans, and there's 2 different types of loans, and he knows which person would work with which one, and it is hard. The hard part about the job is that there are times where you have to be able to tell people no, this is not something that's gonna work for you.
And currently, what do they consider a good credit score?
High 700s.
I'm just
Which I think is different, because on one of the meetings, I don't know if I heard this correctly, but he said that it's going even higher, which I have seen even higher than that. They're in the 800s, so the credit world is changing to the point where it's even more important that it's not below 700.
I find credit scores fascinating because it's you don't know how you get this score, but you just do.
I think it is too, because sometimes I feel the numbers are so random.
Yeah.
I did my internship at ProLeap Physical Therapy. I'm Samantha, and I'll be attending James Madison University this fall, and I'm majoring in kinesiology and minoring in pre-physical therapy. I enjoy hanging out with friends, playing tennis, and staying active. I interned at ProLeap Physical Therapy, and their company focuses on providing patients with relief from pain and dysfunction to allow them to get back to day-to-day activities. I was in the Milford location, which is downtown. This is me there. And they also have a Woodbridge location, and that's just a picture of the gym area in the Woodbridge location. My two site supervisors were Marnie and Keith. Keith is the owner of ProLeap. He has his doctorate of physical therapy. He's an orthopedic clinical specialist and a certified strength and conditioning specialist. Along with owning and working at ProLeap, Keith is a part-time professor at Quinnipiac University, and he teaches an anatomy lab to the PT students. Marnie is the practice manager, and I interacted with her the most since Keith was always busy or not always in the office. And so she trained me, and if I had any questions, I would just go to her office, and she was very friendly, and I felt comfortable going to her. Site experience. I chose this site because I was a patient at ProLeap Physical Therapy a couple years ago for my elbow injury, and I realized then how interested I was in learning about the treatment process in the field of physical therapy. Since my future career goal is to earn my doctorate of physical therapy, I thought that this site was perfect for my internship. The business's mission statement is the Office of ProLeap Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine uses the latest techniques to provide relief from pain and dysfunction. The business of this site is that they provide care for patients experiencing orthopedic injuries, sports injuries, neck and back injuries, and even neurological injuries. They treat a majority of patients who are recovering from surgeries, and the PTs determine the cause of the patient's pain during their initial visit, and they create a long-term relief plan to get their patients back to regular daily life. And this is in the Milford location. It's just like the gym area. They use these tables to work on the patients, and then there's like a turf area and some weights back there for the exercises. These are some examples of the services that they offer: physical therapy, sports medicine, and pain relief. Physical therapy treatment deals with patients recovering from surgery, back and or neck pain, and it focuses mainly on increasing the range of motion and decreasing inflammation. Sports medicine is used when patients have a specific sport or goal that they want to get back to after an injury, and then therapists will move around their treatment style to make sure that that patient is ready for their specific sport. So whether it's certain exercises or drills that they're doing that correlate to the sport, just help them get back to that movement. And lastly, pain relief. This can be provided through services such as manipulations, dry needling, stim technology, and massages. And I just added this in because this is one of their most popular services, and it was the most interesting to me. And it's an Alter G treadmill. And this machine uses differential air pressure technology to reduce the gravitational forces that are on your body. And you can set it to as high as 100% of your body weight or as low as 20%. So you get in, you have to wear these like tight shorts, and they zip you in up here, and it fills up with all this air, and you can do, like, let's say you put 50% of your body weight, so you feel half as heavy as you would. And it's usually used on patients who've had like knee, hip, or ankle injuries, and it shortens the orthopedic recovery time and allows patients to train without pain. And I've seen patients use the Alter G to slowly get them back into running after like a knee surgery, and you can use less of your body weight so it doesn't put as much stress on the injury, so therapists can control that and help slowly get their patient back into certain activities. And I was actually able to try it out during my internship, and it was really cool. You feel like you're like walking on the moon. So like I ran in it and I like walked backwards. It was really fun. So my expectations going into this internship, I knew that it was going to be a challenge for me because I'm not used to putting myself out there making small talk with like patients and coworkers, because I had to see new people almost every day. So I knew that part was going to be challenging. But other than that, I expected to observe therapists throughout their day, learn about patient care, and just help out in any way that I could. For my responsibilities, I dealt with patient interaction, behind the scenes, and observation. the therapist would sometimes ask me to greet their patients and bring them back into exam rooms, so I'd have to walk them into the clinic, create some small talk, and they would also give me whiteboards sometimes of just a list of exercises to take their patients through, so I was able to demonstrate and guide patients with exercises. For behind the scenes, after each appointment, I would clean exam rooms and make sure they were stocked with like pillowcases and supplies that the therapist needed. And I would put gym equipment away that we were using, and I started the laundry sometimes if I was feeling nice. And then for observation, I was expected to shadow therapists, and I could choose different treatments to watch. So if a PT was like dry needling a patient, I could just pop in the room and watch for a little bit. So I got to choose what I was interested in. And I would listen to patient-therapist interactions, and I actually learned a lot from that on how to like address patients and talk to them in a polite way. And lastly, I observed the notes and documentations that therapists had to do after each patient. So they would write down the exercise they had to do and how the patient responded to them, like if they had more pain or less pain. And then those I learned would get faxed to the doctors, and they would have to approve to either allow the same treatment to keep going or if they wanted to make any changes to it. And for my accomplishments, I created many bonds with the coworkers and patients I would see every week. I learned to speak up for myself and not be afraid to ask questions. I was able to manage more than one task at a time, such as working with patients, putting away equipment, making sure rooms were clean. Some of my challenges were becoming comfortable interacting with patients. This was definitely the hardest for me because I was very nervous talking with new people every day. As the internship went on, I became more confident with that. And then lastly, I was always nervous of messing up with the patient's care, and then the therapist would get mad at me, like if I showed the exercise wrong and then they weren't doing the right thing. Didn't want it to be my fault. And I developed multiple skills from this internship. Those include time management, technology, communication, problem solving, and medical knowledge. I had to clean and stock the rooms in time for therapists, and then every 30 minutes when a new patient arrived, I had to be ready to go. And I managed to go through exercises, put equipment away, and fold laundry all within the same time. For technology, I learned about a STEM machine, which is a form of electrical therapy that increases your range of motion, strength, and performance. And they're just little stickers that you place along on your muscles, and they have a wire that connects to a little machine. You can increase the electrical pressure or decrease it. I talked about the allergy. I used that, and I was also taught how to operate it. I didn't do it on a patient, but I was able to watch them use it. I saw a PT use an ultrasound on a patient's ankle, and I learned that it's used to heal soft tissues such as ligaments and tendons. I also spent part of my day at the receptionist desk, so I learned about scheduling and documentation that they needed for the office. For communication, I had a lot of small talk with patients, learned how to work with my coworkers, and asked questions. For problem solving, I had to think quick on my feet. For example, if I had to do a certain exercise with the patient and the machine wasn't available, I had to figure out another way to do an exercise in the similar way with the same goal. And for my medical knowledge, I reviewed therapist daily notes and forms that they had to fill out prior to the appointment. So like the patients would fill out their pain levels like out of 10, and if certain movements increased or decreased their pain. So I would look through those with the PTs, and they would tell me what each aspect of it meant to them as they were going into that first appointment. I removed braces, wraps, and applied ice and hot packs. This internship experience will help me in the future because it provided me with background experience in the field that I want to pursue. I gained more knowledge before attending college, which reinforced my decision on my major in kinesiology. It opened up opportunities and allowed me to form great connection, and it heightened my interest and dedication to my future career. My immediate future plans: I'll be attending James Madison University. I plan on joining their club tennis team along with other organizations and clubs. I was offered a summer job position as a physical therapist aide at Pro Elite, so I'll be doing some of the same tasks that I was doing at my internship. And any questions?
Were you able to watch any of your clients get better or like progress?
A little bit. a lot of them were like recovering from surgery or like ACL repair, so it takes longer, but I could see like they were able to use more weight, they were able to like squat or like step up like higher than they were before, so just little improvements like that. Yes.
I know you said that you were a patient there once. Do you feel like that kind of impacted you starting on the other side?
Yes, definitely.
How
Yeah.
so?
Well, when I went for my elbow after it was from tennis that I had that injury, and I remember I was so upset because I couldn't play. And the PT that I was with was great. I was always excited to go, and I was definitely feeling better. And he was so smart. So he would like explain everything that was like happening in my arm. So it's not like I felt better, but I was like, oh, so like that's why this is happening. And I knew like I just have to do this, make certain muscles stronger, so that this will go away. And I was like, that's really cool. Like I want to be able to know that, or like help other people that are like me to get back to their sports and stuff like that.
Is there like a go-to like movement or exercise that you found to be like really interesting, or was like your favorite to either assign or to do that you could share?
That's a hard one. I definitely liked using the cable machine there, because those were easier, and all you had to do is just like adjust the weight for the patient, and it didn't take as much, like they didn't have to teach me as much through the exercises. So a lot of times I wasn't familiar with the exercise, so they had to like demonstrate it for me, and it would be my first time showing the patient, so I was a little nervous, but I was pretty familiar with all the ones on like the cable machine. So yes.
Well, one's a comment and one's a question. Comment is congratulations on your position for the summer.
Thank
That's
you.
very exciting, and
Thank
obviously says a lot about your experience there and how well you did. But my question is, did you run into any like major challenges, like a really tough client or patient, or something that like kind of caught you off guard that you didn't feel prepared for but had to navigate through?
Yes, I was working with an older patient, and usually the PTs they're there like in the room, but for this time, the therapist had another appointment. They had to be in like an exam room, and I was with their older patient, and I was nervous because it was for their legs, more for like a balance strengthening. So I was like, if he falls, I'm not gonna be able to catch him. And so I was just like on guard the whole time, just making sure that the exercises I was giving to him, that like I wasn't coming up with them, but when I was showing them to him, I was making sure that he was comfortable with them.
Yeah.
But I was just very on edge.
Understandable. Any other questions for Sam? Great work, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about my internship with the Research Administration for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. So a little bit about me. My name is Aylin Burns. I'm a senior at Jonathan Law High School, and next year I will be attending Rice University in Houston, Texas, to major in bioengineering with a concentration in biomolecular engineering. So where did I intern? As I said, I interned with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, specifically with their research administration. So for the most part, I worked at Yale West Campus because that's where a lot of their research administration team is. But some days I worked at the West Haven VA hospital because some days I had to do jobs or tasks over there, so it was a little bit of a split. So who was my site supervisor? My site supervisor was Rebecca, or Becky Sklapinski, and she has a master's in experimental psychology, and she is the administrative officer for the research department of VA Connecticut. So with her position, what she mainly focuses on is the medical facilities research program, and she administers and manages a lot of the business operations of the program. She's responsible for tracking all required activities or elements of their research program, so she focuses a lot on the people who conduct research, research activities, and other educational requirements for all the researchers. So she really focuses to make sure that everyone is up to date with all their trainings and everything else like that. So my site experience. Why did I choose this site? So I already knew that I wanted to participate in undergraduate research, and I couldn't really find any internships working in an actual lab. So I thought that this was really important to start learning about research and focus on what the reviewers would be looking for when I submit my own research in the future. I learned a lot about protocols, rules, and other procedures that I will need to know, so this was definitely a very good experience for my internship. So what is the business of this site? Overall, it's a lot about research administration. So they oversee the medical research program for VA Connecticut. So they oversee a lot of different types of research. They oversee human research, so a lot of clinical trials and things that happen in the VA hospital. They oversee animal research, so this is a lot of testing for treatments that may be used on humans in the future, but it's focused on animals right now. And also bench research, so more cell-level research and focused on other smaller things to eventually be brought to be used on humans. I focused a lot on reviewing, auditing, and storing protocols. So this is really interesting to me because I didn't realize how much writing researchers actually have to do. Some of these protocols were like 200, 300 pages long, and there were these gigantic folders, so I thought that that was really interesting. They also do a lot with ethics and privacy, and I feel like I didn't realize how strict it was, but it's really cool to see how much protection they have for all of their patients. So especially when I was in certain meetings with I got to sit in on an IRB meeting, which is the Institutional Review Board, and they really just look over research, and they were constantly questioning the research and making sure that the subjects are protected and everyone has their privacy, which I thought was really important. So I focus a lot also with the Human Research Protection Program, or the HRPP, which is a system that ensures the protection of human subjects in research. So there were lots of committees and subcommittees to make sure that these people were protected in their research and all of the protocols were followed and everything was working well for the research. And there was also a lot with compliance and non-compliance. So I saw that certain times when I would be learning or sitting in on a meeting, they would be going through the study, but they would also make sure that all of the researchers were being compliant, so they were up to date with their trainings and making sure that they had all the education they needed, and basically just making sure that they're checking in and updating their protocol and that everything is working the way it should be. What were my expectations? So at the start, I expected to be slightly bored just because this was not exactly what I wanted to do in the future, but it ended up being a lot more interesting than I thought, which I was very excited about. And I expected a lot to be in person, which also was completely different. It was so much more virtual than I thought it would be. Almost all the meetings were virtually online. I expected to learn a lot about research and the guidelines to follow, which I did. And I thought I would only be really interacting with my supervisor, but thankfully I got to interact with all of the different workers in the office, which I thought was really fun because they each focused on something for research, but they each did something slightly different, so I got to learn so much more. And then I envisioned a lot of in-person teamwork and communication, which again did not really happen, but mostly everything was virtual, which I thought was very interesting. But it was really cool to see that even if they weren't in the same building, they would still be able to have these constant meetings and check in with each other. So my responsibilities really, honestly, they changed every single day because I would work with different people and I focused on different things every single day. So one thing that was very exciting was I got to learn about and observe an IRB meeting, which is the Institutional Review Board. So I got to sit with one of the specialists who took the minutes for the meeting. So she really explains everything that they were doing, and I got to see actual submitted research from researchers, which was really cool. So they would review the study, and people would ask questions about it. They would make sure it was following all the guidelines. They would make sure that privacy isn't an issue. They would make sure they're following all the ethics requirements, and they would just go through and make sure that the study is okay to move forward. I also organized and accounted for the research EILs, which is the equipment inventory lists. So for this, I was at the VA hospital, and this was really fun to me because I got to walk into a lot of the active labs. One of them is a cancer lab, and some of them were different other labs. But we had to scan all of the equipment that the research had, and they were all over the hospital, so we were walking all over all day. But I thought it was really cool because I got to walk around the hospital and see in the different labs. But they do this to make sure that they can account for all of the equipment that the hospital has bought, or if they need things need to be brought in or turned in, then we take care of that too. I also reviewed privacy laws and research information security. I also thought that this was really important because not only is the research important, but making sure that everyone's information stays private is also very important. I reviewed research protocols submitted to the VA Connecticut IRB, which was very fun to me because in one of the meetings, they were going through actual studies that were submitted, so I got to read what people were submitting for their research, and there were all different studies, and I feel like I didn't notice how many different things you can do research on, but there was so much, and I thought that it was really unique. I got to read and organize the monthly newsletters, so that's what that binder is over there. I had to go through the website and print all the newsletters they had because a lot of the workers referenced them a lot, but they didn't have access to them because they were all virtual, so I printed and organized those for them. And then I also attended a lot of meetings with the IACUC coordinator, who's the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee coordinator, and the Deputy Chief of Staff of Research. So one of these meetings was focused on updating all the forms that they use that are submitted by the IRB or the hospital. And then they were also planning a research and development meeting. So they have meetings, I think, every month for the IRB, but then they have more frequent meetings with the research and development team. So they were kind of just planning what would happen at that meeting. My accomplishments. So I completed a collaborative institutional training initiative. It's called a city training. So I'm now certified in research and development, human research, and VA subjects protection. So this is something that I'm now certified in for the next 3 years and I can use while I'm at Rice. So I thought that was good. I also completed trainings in VA privacy and information security awareness and rules of behavior, and also HIPAA, which stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So these, I had to complete a lot of trainings just to start my internship because I would be around a lot of the research studies. I had to learn how important it is to keep them protected, and I can't really share a lot about what I heard or saw, but things like that to keep them protected. And also I learned how to write, review, and audit a research protocol, which I thought was very interesting because I didn't realize how much scientists actually have to write. So I don't really know what I was expecting, but there was just pages and pages and pages, and every single thing that they do, they need to update it and get it approved by the IRB, so I thought that that was also very interesting. My challenges or problems. Honestly, my biggest challenge, it sounds kind of dumb, but was remembering all of the acronyms, because especially when I was in a lot of the research meetings, they used so many acronyms and it was really hard to remember them. So some of these up here are Associate Chief of Staff for Research and Development, Administrative Officer for Research and Development, Conflict of Interest, Chief of Staff, Office of Human Research Protection, Research Compliance Officer, and there's so many more. And I feel like I was talking to one of the workers who I was interacting with, and she was even saying that switching positions, even within the Connecticut VA, some of the acronyms were the same letters but changed the meaning, so I feel like that just made it even worse. But this is definitely my biggest challenge. Also, access to the government systems on the computers, so I did end up getting my badge, and then I had to use that to have access to the computers, but the signaling was not always very good, so that was a struggle. Access to the buildings when searching for the research department inventory. This was also a little bit of a struggle because the way the inventory list works is some of the things that we were looking for, the research department didn't have anymore, and it was within a different department, so getting access to all those buildings where we needed to scan things was not very easy. Another thing is 50% of the workers are still completely teleworking, so it was very hard to interact with some people sometimes, so a lot of it was virtual. And that was something I definitely was not expecting. I don't really know. I kind of expected everyone to be in person at the same place, and that's not how it works. Also, just to add to it, there was structural damage to a building on the VA West Haven campus where all of the research administration people were working, so I helped aid in the relocation to Yale West campus. So while I was there, at the start, there was barely any people there, and then towards the end of my internship, there were so many more workers there because they had to move over, so there were moving trucks and there were boxes all over the place. So I feel like that was something very interesting, but it did give me the opportunity to talk to new people, so I thought that it still was not too much of a challenge. What I learned a lot about research protocols and amendments. So this, I was very intrigued, I feel like, because every time they even change a word. So they have things that people sign, they have everything about their research study, and if they change one word in their form, they have to resubmit it to the IRB as an amendment, and they have to get their entire study rechecked. So some studies had 11 amendments, so they had to resubmit their entire project 11 times if they change even the slightest word, which I thought was very interesting. I also learned how closely the IRB is and how particular they are with everything. So I learned that they not only look at what you do with the study while you're running it, but even how you advertise it. So they have very strict guidelines that if you're giving someone a stipend or you're paying them, it can't be a bigger font to get people to look at it, it has to be like smaller and towards like the bottom or something like that. And it's like the way you even advertise it, I thought that was something very, very interesting because I didn't even know that that was a thing. They also had the local standard operating procedures, so I learned a lot about those and what they are, and it's really just the research administration gives those out, and it's what like rules researchers have to follow. And I also learned how many rules need to be followed under the Code of Federal Regulations. There are so many rules, and I feel like I did not realize how strict all the rules are with research. And then conclusion. Some skills I developed, I learned how to write a research protocol, which I thought was very interesting because even though it's so many pages, I got to see the structure. I learned a lot about teamwork. So this was one of the most interesting things I feel like I learned because even everyone working in the office, even if they did the same job, they worked very differently and everyone had a different personality. So I thought it was very interesting to see how everyone works together. I also learned a lot about problem solving because they had the whole move going on. So they were talking about moving boxes, and then they had some days they would have like goals set for themselves and they didn't actually reach those goals because they were helping with the move and other things. So I thought that also learning how to adjust your goals was very important. And then especially new technology and creative thinking to solve all the problems that were going on. I thought that was also another big thing that I learned. How will my internship help me in the future? It will absolutely help me, and I'm actually very glad that I did this internship because I'm so much more familiar with research. I know how in-depth research protocols are and how careful to be before and during a study, which is something definitely very good to know as I want to go and to pursue research. I also learned what the IRB looks for and how particular they are. As I was saying before, even just advertising your study, it's so in-depth. I'm also certified in trainings that are usable until 2026, so that will be good, so less that I have to do at Rice. And then I'm familiar with example research studies, and I learned a lot about different study options. So I feel like I was like very limited with my knowledge about what research could be done, but I started reading some of these studies, and they were so cool. Like it was like some of the most random things that I would never think to do a study on or never think there would be a connection between that they were doing a study on, so I thought that that was very cool. So my future plans are to graduate Jonathan Law High School, and then over the summer I'm going to be working as a lifeguard at the Paugussett Pool and Tennis Coach. And on top of lifeguarding, I'm also going to be a swim coach for the 6 and under age group. And then I will be attending Rice University to major in bioengineering, and I hope to work in a laboratory in Houston, Texas. And I'm also going to continue volunteering for Sandy Hook Promise. So thank you. Are there any questions? Grace.
What did you think was the most important thing that's going to help you when you go to school?
I feel like the most important thing that will help me is definitely just learning and being more familiar with the research and how specific it is, because I feel like I didn't realize how much writing actually went into the research, so I thought that was really cool to learn about. But I also think that my biggest takeaway would be just seeing how everyone interacts, because even people with the same job, they did it very differently. So I feel like that was really cool to learn about how like there's a big balance about what you can do and there's different ways to get your work done.
Did you find it difficult with your site supervisor not always there?
At the start, it was a little difficult. She was in person some of the days I was there, but some days I was in person, she was virtual. So I feel like I still really connected with her, but it also allowed me to connect with other people in the office, which I thought was very helpful because I got to sit with one person who was much better qualified in like the IRB, so she was their coordinator, so I learned about the IRB from her, and then I worked with another person who was more focused on auditing the protocols. So I got to go through all the protocols with her, and she showed me what they're looking for and everything like that. So I feel like it was a bit of a challenge at first, but it honestly helped me the most because I got to interact with so many different people with different jobs.
Does seeing like all the different types of research have you like think about a certain type that you want to do in the future?
I think it does. I'm definitely more interested in like cell level research. So I do still am leaning towards cancer research or just like disease research like that with the cell level. But I feel like it was so cool to just see some of the different studies because like I would have never thought about them, but they look so cool, and like I feel like I would want to do that too.
Do you have an example of one of like the weirder ones that you came across that you wouldn't have thought put together, or something that they had looked into?
I'm trying to think. I feel like one of them was just about like headaches, and I don't remember especially what they were like connecting it to, but even just like a study on headaches, like I feel like I would never think to like do a study about that, but they were just so different, and I feel like all of them were just completely, like I read one about like genetics, which I thought was very interesting. Didn't really completely understand it, but I got the general idea. But I feel like it was just the range was really cool to see because like I would never think you could do research about things like that. Thank you.